So I want to focus on the challenge of being a whisperologist, the challenge that comes from a therapy, from a way of looking at people, from a way of listening that is so dependent upon the whisperologist. So we use dowsing, really. It's a form of dowsing when we put our hands on people. It's a powerful way to connect with people, and yet it's subject to the limitations of the person that's doing the work. So besides learning the protocol, we talk about getting out of the way. And I want to talk about that as it relates to using the protocol. So what distinguishes whisperology from other forms of therapy is all of our tools are intention-based, and that includes the testing process. Whether we are talking about testing or imprinting, the whisperologist needs to not unintentionally interfere with the process. As all of you know, it's about getting out of the way. What gets in the way? Many things. Negative entanglements with the test subject, whether those entanglements be remote or local. Our own agendas to prove what we have already decided is correct and true. Our fears of being competent to use intentional-based field resonance testing tools. We might label these interferences in a negative manner because they highlight what is wrong with ourselves or the approach to practicing whisperology. However, there's another way of looking at getting out of the way that isn't so much about doing something wrong or wondering about being adequate in the heart or in the head. The freedom to choose our targets of attention is also the key to aligning with the intention of helping others. Therefore, in addition to letting go of our limiting beliefs, there's also the sense of invisibly reaching for what we will hold onto, of what we choose to believe about ourselves and the power of whisperology. What we believe is the unshakable power and accuracy of intention-based field resonance testing when we get ourselves out of the way. So I like that language of getting out of the way. And some of the tools of whisperology and trying to be so complete, so perfect, expose some of our own limitations as well. And I know this from my own practice because I want to do such a good job. I want to be so complete. And a word that I was raised with is the word perfect. And so I know I've given you one way of testing the accuracy of your findings. This is perfect. This is perfect. This is perfect. And so I want to talk about that because I want to suggest that there might be another term, another word, another way of looking at that. So this is a little bit of a possible question with a response, with an answer. So here we go. Is the word perfect a good choice for evaluating intention statements and numerical sequences? After completing a statement or sequence, the outcome is checked for accuracy, one word or digit at a time. Accuracy is checked by using the first skill of whisperology. You have been taught how to create scales to check for accuracy, monitor progress, and assess the coherence of targets. The evaluation of the quality of a statement might use words like, on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is no coherence and 10 is full coherence, the intention statement is this particular number. each word is considered so that substitutions may occur and increase the overall coherence of the intention statement. And of course, that's about raising the negentropic power of that statement. That's why we make those determinations. One of the ways that I showed you to consider each word includes the use of the word perfect with statements like, this word is perfect, or that number is perfect. The use of the statement is intended to reduce the whispered response to a simple yes or no. As we have discussed many times, the asking of questions, like in this example, is this word perfect, introduces uncertainty with the possibility of questionable answers. So we always avoid questions, right? Because questions produce questionable responses. I continue to believe that the use of simple, unambiguous statements is an excellent strategy to specify and strengthen the power of intention. However, I think the word perfect carries unintended baggage and potential troubles for many of us, sometimes including myself. Perhaps I'm aware of this difficulty because my own standards and limiting beliefs are engaged by the word perfect. I believe that I grew up in a context where the need to excel had positive and less than positive effects. I am sure that many of you have had similar experiences and histories about the push to be the best we could possibly be, with that push coming from mostly parents and teachers. This brings me to an obvious question. What might be your connections, conscious and unconscious, to the word perfect? Are you aware of any limiting beliefs that are triggered by the word perfect? What is the context of the word perfect in your own history? I find myself wondering if the reason you lose clarity or focus during the testing process might be the intrusion of interfering thoughts and emotions connected to the fear of needing to be perfect or the possibility of being wrong. When you start thinking about being right or wrong when you're testing, you've already taken a huge step away from that place that you need to be to listen, to be a whisperee. Trying to be perfect, being run by the thought of needing to be perfect, does not help any of us. There's no grace in it. The word perfect could be an unintended trigger that awakens the small self and gets in the way of the testing or the imprinting process. The unwelcomed presence of needing to be perfect, combined with the belief that I can't ever be perfect, creates an obstacle to practicing any of the Whisperology skills and accurately using the protocol. How does the word perfect relate to the karmic vectors? I think this is really an interesting thing to consider when you're learning and practicing Whisperology. I believe that most of us are affected by the word perfect in some fashion that engages ego. These examples demonstrate how thoughts about doing anything perfectly or being perfect are found in the limiting beliefs of every karmic vector. Perfect might be linked to the fear of not being right about something. The fear might have to do with self-criticism or what others think of you being wrong. Being perfect might interfere with the alignment to the karmic vector of faithfulness because of the condemnation of limiting beliefs that fuel shame, like, I'm worthless, I'm a loser, I am defective. That's not the way you want to be feeling in the midst of a protocol when all of a sudden you're struggling and you are feeling that. Being perfect might interfere with the alignment to the karmic vector of freedom because of the blaming that is sustained by guilt and the threat of judgment. Thoughts like, I must be perfect. I keep making the same mistakes. I'm afraid of showing my true feelings. Being perfect might interfere with the alignment to the karmic vector of kindness because of the frustration and loss of patience with others or yourself, engendering anger. I should never feel jealous. I should never feel frustrated. Being perfect might be linked to limiting beliefs that interfere with alignment to the karmic vector of hopefulness, because there is a cloud of despair that quickly appears when you find yourself thinking, I don't want to get invested in anyone or anything too much. I feel isolated from others. Being perfect might interfere with alignment to the karmic vector of humility because of the ego's stubbornness about making everything a personal demonstration of my accomplishments, my abilities, my status. Pride swells when it's about me. You can easily hear the grandiosity in limiting belief statements like, I'm right and you are wrong. I'm superior to others. So when you start to feel defensive in some way, if you're testing someone and you're engaging them in a conversation, what is being activated within yourself? And have you maintained your alignment with Source? Being perfect might be linked to limiting beliefs that interfere with alignment to the karmic vector of joy, because the prospect of not knowing that I can ever do enough to protect or hide from the debilitating state of grief is constant. This is evidenced by statements like, I am cursed, I will never be joyful, life is not fair. And you could add other statements that would be amplified in the testing process too. Being perfect might be linked to limiting beliefs that interfere with alignment to the karmic vector of gentleness, because the thought that I don't measure up to my standard, however unreasonable that may be, keeps the prospect of punishment and abusiveness close at hand with thoughts like, I should always try to please others. Don't ever say anything that might hurt someone else. Being perfect might be linked to limiting beliefs that might interfere with alignment to the karmic vector of love, because the impossibility of ever being perfect hounds you with the temptation to give up, not care, and choose the stance of apathy or indifference. You are consciously or unconsciously de-energized by thoughts like, if I am myself, then people will like me. Life should be easier. Being perfect might be linked to limiting beliefs that interfere with alignment to the karmic vector of peace, because there is a gnawing restlessness that never disappears about what you have done or left undone. Everything feels tainted by anxiety, so that it becomes difficult to relax, let go of the past, make decisions in the present moment, and stop obsessing about the future. Where is the grace in needing to be perfect? There is no grace in thoughts like, I should always feel in control. I must never make a mistake. As you can easily see, the fear of not being perfect or acting perfectly is a major force that undermines the power of intention. Being perfect is weaponized by the mindedness of the ego through limiting beliefs that manifest forces of judgment, rejection, and condemnation. This fear might creep into the testing process. Does the word perfect trigger an emotional response within yourself? If so, then it's time to use a different word. That's a very easy thing to test by self-testing and holding in mind perfect And what is your level of consciousness? What are the emotions that you feel with that word? So it would be a clue that perhaps the word perfect is not a good word for you to use when you are creating intention statements or you are developing numerical sequences. So I spent a lot of time coming up with alternatives to something as simple as the word perfect. It isn't as easy as I thought it might be, but here's what I came up with, which I think is helpful. So what might be a better word to use than perfect? Based on the testing of several alternative words, I concluded that an excellent choice is to use the word exact. I'm using the word exact to specifically mean something that is in harmony, accordance, or compliance with a so-called fact. That is the key to using the word exact. Being whisperologist, I expect you to respond with questions like, wait a minute, why do you say fact? Fact is content. Facts change based on the context. What is true in one situation is not necessarily the same in another context. Whose facts or truths are we talking about? And so on. These are valid and appropriate questions. I would encourage you to highlight that paragraph, that thought, because it's going to make sense when we get to the next part. So I believe the answer to this concern is that the word exact must be placed within a particular context. I tested several scripts to determine what words and phrases would be concise and simple to use during testing to create a numerical sequence. Why? Because we want to get out of our heads to get past following a recipe and just cooking with Whisperology. So what are scripts? The scripts for the creation of intention statements are the words in the context. That's the key word. The words in the context of the intention statement are the exact words to activate the intention. The word activate is very important. So that statement is a very good way of securing the use of the word exact. And I believe because it states context and activation, it keeps the ego out of the way, and some of the interfering, limiting thoughts that are accompanied by the word perfect are well handled this way. So the words in the context of the intention statement are the exact words to activate the intention. So the word is exact. You're checking a digit. The numerical digit is exact. The scripts for the creation of the numerical sequence are, in the context of the intention statement, you would recite the intention statement. That's why you always write the intention statement down, so your attention doesn't stray from that intention statement. The exact number of digits to activate that intention statement is. So let me repeat it again. In the context of the intention statement, the exact number of digits to activate the intention statement is. And then what follows from that makes sense. In the context of the intention statement, the exact sequence within the intention is. So the word within has very deliberately been chosen. So use that word within. So the words exact, activate, and within are in capital letters for emphasis because these choices are very specific and appear to be highly coherent to the creation of an exact numerical sequence. So let's just agree with a sense of humor that scripts don't need to be perfect, but they need to be exact. They need to be exact to the context. That context is created by the intention. Now that we have that context, we can be exact about the content, because that numerical sequence is expressing the content within the context of the intention statement. So you can see how that might feel differently than going through and looking, is each word perfect? Because most of us have some kind of unconscious connections to the word perfect. So I hope that helps you to develop more exact numerical sequences that reflect your intention statement. I do think these scripts will be of help if they are consistently applied without too much thinking. Being open and humble to the exact word or sequence in the context of testing as an activity of listening to God's whispers for what is needed in that specific situation. I believe in the context of humility, we are given the opportunity to surrender the worries, fears, and expectations about needing to be right. Why? Because that creates that question and fear about not wanting to be wrong. Surrender perfection. Embrace the gifts of the Spirit. So there's a couple of more things here to help, hopefully, to do that. One is I've written out something that just says creating a numerical sequence. I think this is a very easy way to get even a little bit faster with the protocol, to stay in line with Source and not to get up in your head. So I've written it in a way that is easy to read in the context of the intention statement, and then you can write the intention statement down after that. The exact number of digits to activate the intention statement is, and you could write that down. And similarly, in the context of the intention statement, write it down. The exact sequence within the intention statement is. So I think that will help for being able to create an exact numerical sequence that is powerful to the intention statement. And then there's one more tool connected to this. There are many ways to create a numerical sequence, which I have demonstrated and shown you. But there's a visual tool that might be of help. And this visual tool is a simple circle, and the circle has all of the digits, including 0 on it, and a location for space. We'll call that a punctuation mark, not always required. And then below, there's a simple tool for determining sequence length. All of these are simply tools to make it easier for you to do this work. So either using your eyes or using your finger, you can determine that sequence length very quickly. This is just one way to write it. You might find a way that's a little bit easier to make that visual. And then I like to, as you know, gather sequences 2 digits at a time, but I know for some people it's easier to do it 1 digit at a time. And again, you can use your hand and you can place it over the circle. It works very, very well. But the key to using this well also goes with having that in your mind, that you are looking for the exact sequence for that intention. As long as you stay there, this is a really helpful tool. But if you are into, I'm not sure I've got that right or wrong, we're activating doubt, or I need to be right, or I hope it's perfect, it may be that using this language will help you to not worry so much, and also to be more exact. You can use that language for the intention statement as well. The intention statement at this time, so you're contextualizing what you're doing, is exact. This word is exact. This word is exact. This word is exact. And then you can go back and recalibrate the intention statement as a whole. And if there is some opportunity to improve that statement, again, remember the context. Within the context of this intention, this word is exact. This word is exact. This word is exact. So I hope that gives you another way to improve the quality of your testing, but also a way to help keep you from getting in the way by trying too hard, by trying to be too perfect. So I want to emphasize a couple of other key points about numerical sequences. Perhaps it's good to just remind you that numerical sequences give us a language that is exact. Why is it exact? Because numerical sequences connect to all of us in some way that doesn't require an understanding of a word. Every word has a context. So when two people communicate with each other, even if they're using the same words, contextual differences create different meanings. A 3 is a 3. It's not a 4. But if I ask you about love, we could get as many different answers as people. I like to use the analogy of a picture. We can all look at the same picture. We might use the same words to describe the picture. But what that means to one person versus another person can be very different because those two people don't share the same context. We avoid that when we use numerical sequences. Numerical sequences are so interesting because they are a different kind of a language, a different way of carrying intention. And I find that there are certain sequence lengths that appear often. Digits, 7-digit sequences, 10, 12, 15 and 16, 27. I think the longest sequence I've created is 96 digits. But most are in those common numbers. But if your sequence is 13 or 14 digits, and that is what is required in that moment, trust what it is that you have found. Use that language of exact. If we asked a different kind of question through statement, that a sequence was perfect, there is no sequence of numbers that is perfect in the sense that it captures absolutely everything contained in an intention. That would require an infinite number of digits. But powerful intention is usually exchanged with anywhere from 5 to 16 digits. In general, the more digits, the more specific the intention statement is. So I find that if you've created an intention statement with multiple verbs or a very specific object, or if it's an intention statement that has to do with a limiting belief, and there are details in that limiting belief, you'll have more digits to capture that intention. I also made reference when you are creating a sequence to the presence of spaces. I suppose you could call it the punctuation in a sequence. In general, intention statements are much more powerful if we suspend our thinking about grammar. There should be an A or an and there, maybe a the there. It doesn't really read quite right, but you'll find when you create intention statements, sometimes it's simply necessary to list the verbs. And if you ask, there's an order. Just like there is an order for the numerical sequence, there is an order to have the most coherent intention statement when you're creating it in that way. So punctuation in terms of a numerical sequence, I think about it in a couple of different ways. The most common way would be that there is a space in the intention statement. 1 or 2 or 3 spaces. That's not always the case. But if there is, the way that I would encourage you to use the intention statement is to take about 1 second per digit. And when you have a space, the pause around 3 seconds. So you don't have to time it, but have the client practice that intention statement in that way. So 3, 6, 2, 4, 5, 3, 9, 6, 1. After they repeat the intention statement, the numerical sequence, and if they're supposed to do it several times, just have them wait a couple of moments before they repeat it again. We've talked about linking and reading the intention statement with the numerical sequence. A common question is, well, can I just do the numerical sequence silently? And absolutely, you can do that. But we're so easily distracted that if we speak that numerical sequence out loud, it tends to help us keep our attention on the intention of the numerical sequence. So when you are determining that numerical sequence, you could generate all of those numbers first, and then you might say, are any spaces included through statement? Or if you're doing it 1 digit at a time, and you were using this version of the tool, and you went around and you had 2, 4, and what comes up next is space, that will happen. Then put a space. And it isn't always that those spaces are uniformly distributed within a sequence. It might be 3, 1, and then there's a space and 6 digits, and there's a space and there's 1 more digit. So don't feel conformed by what you have experienced in the past. Be open to the length and we'll call it the punctuation of that sequence through inclusion of spaces. There's a second way that you can also have fun with numerical sequences, and that's the idea of thinking about each digit as an object, as a thing. And if you're doing that, let's say that you have a numerical sequence of 12 digits or 12 things. We're accustomed to creating those sequences as linear, read from left to right, because if you were to take that sequence and write it from right to left, it carries a completely different intention. So unlike simple arithmetic, where we learn 1 plus 2 equals 2 plus 1, 1, 2, 3 in Whisperology does not equal 3, 2, 1. And there's some nuance of difference between 1 space, 2, 3 equals 1, 2 space 3. And if we add one other variant to that, seeing those as objects, if you have a 12-digit sequence, in mathematics, we would call that a 1 by 12 matrix. So you really have a matrix. What happens with permission if you ask if the exact numerical sequence might be reflected in a matrix? So the first 3 numbers are in the first row. The next 3 numbers are below that or above that. You can also arrange a numerical sequence around a particular shape or constellation. When you take and arrange each of the digits, regarding it as an object, you are creating what's called an array. And it too has a kind of additional negentropic power. It's an organizing power that suggests that there is a relationship between these objects, which is more than simply described by a linear sequence. You can have fun with this. You could play with taking a sequence and arranging it in 3 or 4 different ways. If you'd like to have fun, for example, take the 12-digit sequence and use a triangle. And ask where to place that first digit. Is it at the vertex of the triangle? Does the vertex point up or down? Do you arrange the digits clockwise or counterclockwise? What about the first 3 digits within one triangle, and the second 3 digits in a larger triangle? Think about the constellation of a snowflake. Think about the constellation of a square. Or I've also, using this idea of array, arranged those around a circle. Check the different level of coherence. Check the strength of the different ways of delivering that intention. So there are different interesting ways to stay curious about potentially making a numerical sequence even more powerful. And if we talk about using that, imprinting that on something like a vial, perhaps the best way to use that, if you're imprinting a vial with a sequence, is to create that as an array. Place the vial on the array. It works. It works. So I hope that provides some other good thoughts to think about when it comes to making numerical sequences. The sequence 1843 9372 275429. I feel full coherence to that sequence. That imprint is complete. But there's a second tool that's required for the completion, the fulfillment of this intention statement to remove and release ingested toxicity. That triangle is in primary triangle group 6, and it is the element manganese. If I put manganese in mind, I can feel the incoherence to manganese. So we have 2 ways of going about addressing this: imprinting directly to create elemental coherence with manganese, or to create a vial that the client can hold and could potentially use after this time of treatment. So I'll ask what the preference is. And the preference is to create a vial for manganese and to have her hold the vial. So I'm going to do that right now. And I'll speak out loud. Let us imprint fully and completely the consciousness of manganese in all of its forms, in all of its environments, known and unknown, past, present, and future, leaving nothing behind. And let us imprint the informational structures of manganese in all of its forms and all of its environments, known and unknown, past, present, and future, leaving nothing behind. And let us imprint the energetic structures of manganese in all of its forms, in all of its environments, known and unknown, past, present, and future, leaving nothing behind. And let us imprint the physical structures of manganese in all of its forms and all of its environments, known and unknown, past, present, and future, leaving nothing behind. The consciousness, informational, energetic, and physical structures of manganese in all of its forms and all of its environments, known and unknown, past, present, and future, are fully gathered into this space, gathered by the power of intention, held here for as long as it is necessary to bring healing to this client. So we've imprinted a vial we call an H vial. It's a vial created solely by intention, not by beginning with a substance or some kind of an electromagnetic signature for manganese. We've included all the qualities of manganese, not simply its chemical or electromagnetic properties. And in this case, I'm going to have her hold it in her left hand for around 3 minutes, and I'm going to monitor the changes. So, usually that will feel quite relaxing. So I have my hands, I'm simply monitoring. You could liken it to a kind of melting as that incoherence disappears. I'm also asking while this is going on if it will be necessary for her to continue to use the vial, to give it to her, or if I should simply do this for one time only. Okay, I'll take that back. I put manganese in mind and I don't feel the incoherence to it anymore. When I put the intention statement in mind to release and remove ingested toxins connected with the large intestine, I lose that stress as well. And if I want to, we can go back and look at that initial level of incoherence in the digestive system. And because I'm curious. And so we were at 88 out of 100 for the coherence level for the digestive system. Now on that same scale of 0 to 100, it's around 93. So there's been an increase in the coherence by eliminating that incoherent condition. So this is the way in which we test. We identify a system when we're in the physical side of this. We find the target. We find the level of specificity around that target. We determine the conditions, and then we begin to address the conditions one at a time with the appropriate tools. We've identified and cleared one of the limiting conditions affecting the large intestine, which was about ingested toxicity. Now we'll go on to the second, which is about parasite incoherence. Parasite incoherence not from an acquired parasite. And we've identified 3 verbs and created an intention statement: stabilize, accept, recontextualize parasites. So we are going to find the tools, and there are 2 tools here to use. The first tool is a numerical sequence, so we'll identify that numerical sequence first. The second portion is also an elemental coherence. So a 12-digit sequence to identify for this intention statement. That sequence will gather in by 2 digits again. 1469. 1981. 3881. So the sequence to stabilize, accept, recontextualize parasites, we'll check it one digit at a time, is 1, 4, 6, 9, 1, 9, 8, 1, 3, 8, 8, 1. So I'll imprint that now, silently. Okay. And there's a second tool to be used, and it is to imprint, to create elemental coherence to the element rhenium. I've already gone ahead and made that vial, and so I'm going to have the client hold the vial for a few minutes in the left hand, and I'm just going to monitor the creation of coherence with rhenium. That was nearly immediate. I'm just going to give it a little bit more time. Sometimes the person will feel these changes in the form of a relaxation. It might be a global kind of relaxation, or it might be very specific to a particular body region or organ. In this case, large intestine, that might be a relaxation that one feels in the abdomen. Take that back. This is the point of determining whether it would be beneficial for her to keep this vial and use it periodically, but I don't find that that's necessary. So let's redetermine the level of coherence of the digestive system. So using that same scale on a scale of 0 to 100, where 0 is zero digestive coherence in that system, and 100 is 100%, it's now slightly over 98. So that's a nice change. Because the systems work together, we could even ask the question if it's influenced the other systems, although that's much more likely when you're dealing with the non-physical incoherence. But let's just ask, So the endocrine system was the second most incoherent system. It read at 93 out of 100. It is currently, it's about 94 out of 100. So there's been some mild improvement in the coherence of the endocrine system. The nervous system was 95 out of 100. It's currently on that same scale of 0 out to 100. It's 98. So those kinds of findings don't surprise me, because it's somewhat arbitrary to pick a particular system. When we create coherence in the systems, all of the systems at the same time. So I hope this information has been helpful. I hope this gives you a good start for learning how to begin to use the protocol. No one protocol is completely used with any person, because we follow the individual person's presentation through permission. This might be the conclusion of this protocol, but we would ask for permission to continue. We call this completing one cycle. So the way we would close this or continue it is again with permission. So there's permission to continue, and I don't believe that permission is there. So at this point we would say this is the completion of the protocol for this time.